Hello and welcome to Right Now at the Comedy Club here at the Comedy Club of Kansas City. I am Dustin Kaufman. Thanks for watching. Make sure and follow us across all the social media. We keep it really simple, just simply at thecomedyclubkc.com. We got a lot of great shows coming up. Eleanor Kerrigan for New Year's Eve. Kevin Nealon. We're about to go on sale with Hannibal Buress, Felipe Esparza. Lots and lots of wonderful people here at the Comedy Club every week. So right now, I'm sitting here with our comic this weekend, one of my favorite comics on the planet for several reasons, Mr. Derrick Stroup. How are you, buddy?
I'm great. Thanks for having me,
Let's
man.
fist bump.
Yeah, buddy. Look at us matching.
Oh,
Look at this earth tone, same green.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
This is new. I got the Kansas City.
Looks good.
Representing that.
Yeah.
We have a rally house here, which is just, I'm sure they're everywhere, but
yeah.
Here they have just, it's all
like a merch store for the city?
For the city.
Yeah.
For the sports teams, but they do have this whole new section where they are selling shirts for some barbecue places and pizza places. And I'm like, well, how do we get the Comedy Club of Kansas City in that? Right?
That'd be
so
sick.
We're coming for you, Rally House.
There we go. I love that.
Dude, thanks for being here.
Yeah, always, man. I wouldn't pass up a chance to sit down and talk to you. I can promise you that.
Oh, man. So the first time I saw your comedy, you were introduced to me, I guess, through AJ Finney.
Yeah, great guy.
Good friend. And I went down to watch the High Plains Festival, and the show I saw you on wasn't actually on the festival. It was like I went with AJ, who was doing a show just at a small theater,
Voodoo Comedy Club is what it was called. It's called Rise Comedy now.
Really intimate.
But I remember.
Theater. And
yeah, little box.
Yeah, and AJ introduced us as people ahead of time, and then you come out, and your energy and just your controlled anger and your tone and your jokes, you may probably did 10 or 15 minutes that night. And I'm like, I'm going to headline this guy.
Oh, man.
This is I love angry comedy, in general, but smart, and just, you're so funny with it.
Well, thank you. And I remember that very well. I mean, that's the only, I haven't done many festivals in my career. I've done High Plains Comedy Festival. I've done Moon Tower, and that's it. And you always hear that it's supposed to work where bookers and showrunners and that sort of thing, they come out and they book you, and you never hear that happening. So to have you, boots on the ground, club owner, inside the building, see my set, as soon as I get off stage, you're like, hey, man, I'm Dustin. We're going to be in contact, yada, yada, yada. It was so cool to see how it's supposed to work. And you want to, I told my agent before I came out here, Sean, how we met and how this, and he was like, that is so great because nobody does that. There's only a few that do that the way that you're supposed to, where you go out, put your eyes on these people yourself, and you go, I like that.
Yeah.
I think this would fit what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. And
you book them. And so, yeah, kudos to you, too.
I booked so many people from that festival.
Yeah.
I have Shane Torres next week, who I found at that festival. Great. This will be a second time back. This is what, your third?
Yeah, this is my third. Us. Yeah.
I've heard your comedy described, maybe even from you, but I've heard described as a young, angry Ron White. I've heard that a lot. I wanted to ask kind of how do you feel about that? And also, like, are you embracing that? Because your act this hour almost seems a little angrier even than, like, to the point where I'm watching you, I'm like, is he gonna die on stage?
Yeah, no, I get that. It's probably just the seasons of life, and in this hour I am ranty and I'm getting some stuff off my chest. I feel a certain way about the stuff I'm talking about, but I don't mind the comparisons to Ron White. I've heard like a Sam Kinison, Ron White kind of hybrid, but I love Ron's comedy. Now, I've watched just about his entire catalog. I got to say, sometimes I'm shocked that he was on Blue Collar Comedy. He can be the dirtiest comic in the country. Some of his jokes, so I'm not nearly as dirty. And I would say in my newest hour, you've probably noticed I'm a lot cleaner with my language on stage. I still kind of attack the subjects the same way. I'm just not, yelling the F word and that sort of thing.
I don't think the audience thinks of you as clean or dirty, but you are not dirty.
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of
because of your energy. You have an edge to your energy, so nobody's gonna sit there and be like, "This is just I don't want to see clean comp," because the staff have all been like, "Dude, this is one of the funniest people we've ever had."
Oh well,
like,
that's so cool.
You have comics coming to watch you.
That's super flattering. To hear that. But yeah, the comparison to Ron White, I don't hate. He's much slower and much more Texas than I am, but we kind of come from the same world. Is it just the Southern? Yeah, I think it is, and it might be the storytelling and kind of how you look at things and describe things. I'm the least country person in my family by a long shot, and that surprises people. I'm kind of the black sheep. But I grew up around very country folks, so I describe things still very country. The way that the lens that I look through is very country, and I think that that's what me and Ron probably share is that perspective.
Yeah, you mentioned that you kind of did mention that a little more ranty, a little cleaner in this hour. Mm-hmm. What is the inspiration behind your current hour of comedy?
I would say, probably people learning more about me. I talk about my family. I talk about my fiance. I talk about, I'm always going to talk about my love for food. I mean, one of my first favorite comedians was John Pinette, and all he did was talk about eating, and I loved it. So for every hour I ever have in my life, I will be mentioning food. It is a true passion. I don't just make that up, But yeah, so it, in this last hour, there's a lot of self-expression, and there always has been, but I've always kind of been middle of the road. But this time, I really I'm getting some things off my chest, and also I would say the theme would also be nostalgic. I've got a lot of stuff where I talk about how I was raised. Being a 90s kid is a big chunk of my act, and it plays for people, even who are 80s kids. Yeah. It plays for several decades. But yeah, it's fun. It's a fun hour.
I was born in the 80s, raised in the 90s.
Yeah.
Definitely with that.
Yeah, you get it. And that's what a lot of this hour is about.
Your bit about being stuck at house parties and not having Ubers and stuff is the perfect example of that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that comes from a real place. I mean, sometimes on stage, I'm wondering if I'm even telling jokes. I'm just telling funny truths. It's because everybody 30 miles outside of town, stranded at a house party without a cell phone. I mean, it's such a different world. I mean, I can't even imagine that now. Like, I wouldn't be able to. So it's fun to look back. Now I turned 40 this year, and I guess I'm,
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, buddy.
How did you take that? Because I know how I took it.
Let me tell you something. I hate it so much.
Yeah.
I hate it so much. I really do.
What is it that you hate about it?
I don't want to grow old.
I know.
And I've been scared of it my whole life.
Is it death?
It's death, and it's also like watching old people I've watched grow old. It's never been lost on me, the changes and the slowdown and the things that happen. And I've always been surrounded by people in my family that, didn't give me a lot of advice, but I can't tell you, Dustin, how many times they told me not to grow old. And you're like, that's the only thing I can't control.
I think there's a difference between growing old and growing up. You have to grow old.
That's right.
But I don't want to grow up.
For sure. No, I mean, Peter Pan's my hero, man. I mean, I don't ever want to grow up. And I try not to, but turning 40 is pretty sobering. It hurt when I turned 30. I can remember when I turned 30 and I thought, I mean, that bothered me.
I don't know if 30 bothered me. 40, before I could even say it without stuttering on the F's, I'm going to be...
Yeah. No, I get that.
I actually had to stop and do some self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to just stop and go, okay, I'm...
Yeah.
But in the first 40 years of my life, mm-hmm. and in especially the last 20... this is what I've accomplished.
Yeah.
These are the places I've been. Mm-hmm. These are the children I've had. This is the club I have now. Mm-hmm. These are the places I've performed, the people I've worked, the documentaries I've made, just everything. And I was like, I just had to I had to look at the picture that I've painted for myself.
Yeah.
And then just accept that I've earned 40.
Man, that's cool. I mean, that's a really cool perspective. I don't think everybody can do that. I mean, but being able to look back and go, hey, man, look, you did pretty good.
Yeah.
You should be proud of yourself.
You've
Look
done
at what
a
you've
lot.
got.
You've done a lot. Let's
Yeah.
go gamble.
Yeah. No, I love that. No, I mean, and you know, my 30s were great. You know, I moved to Denver when I was 30 years old, and then I was there for that entire decade. And so yeah, I had a good 30s.
What was that like? Because you're born in Alabama.
That's right.
And then moved to Denver. So I know you've talked a little bit about it on stage and stuff, but what was that transition from Alabama, smaller town in Alabama?
Yeah.
Denver's huge.
Yeah, for sure.
So I remember when I was 20, I went to go work a summer job at Yellowstone National Park.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been on road trips with the folks down to the Ozarks or St. Louis and stuff.
Yeah.
But Kansas City, yeah, biggest city in like, you know, a very, like, it's the biggest city for a long ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Still a very small town.
For
It's very
sure.
flat. So I went to go work at Yellowstone, and I remember I was driving through Colorado up to Wyoming, and then you see the mountains, and I'm in this tiny little Toyota, and I just like, it was the first time in my life I was like, I'm an ant on this
Yeah,
planet.
that's right.
Like, we're meaningless. Like, look how big and giant just this world is. Sorry, I thought I had that off. And so, like, that was really the first time that I, coming from a small town, just seeing the world and the earth itself was
Yeah.
like, I'm tiny. And then you go to Chicago and you go to these places, and it's like, I can't even drive here. So what was that transition from Alabama to a very progressive Denver?
It was true culture shock. First plane I'd ever been on took me to Denver.
Yeah.
30 years old.
That was the first plane?
First plane.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, to say it was a big move would be, you know, but my back was against the wall. I didn't really have any other options. I was, you know, down to go for it. But it was definitely culture shock, overwhelming. I'd never even traveled much, you know. I'd never been out of the Southeast really. So I had to kind of understand people being from a different place. Just because somebody doesn't say thank you because you held the door open doesn't mean that you can follow them home. You know, that doesn't mean that they're a bad person, you know. I mean, I used to take a lot of things personal with people's manners when I first moved to Denver, and I realized slowly is the key word, but I did realize that these are good people that are just raised, you know, with different standards of manners and how the dance should go in conversation and you know, so I wrote about it immediately.
Are people not holding doors for you?
No, they're not. No, and it's just common courtesy. Is just, you know, a lot of people talk about like Southerners, it's a fake, whatever, it's a fake. Well, holding the door open is not fake, and letting the lady walk through first is not fake. And, you know, saying thank you and you're welcome and how's your day, that's not all. That's really a dance that we do because it's a friendly way to engage with people. Denver's not like that. They're not ice cold, but they're not there to, you know, have that morning conversation. They're not going to ask you how your afternoon's been, and they don't say thank you when you hold the door open very often, which drove me crazy. But I mean,
You're welcome.
Yeah, I mean, really, exactly. That's how it felt. And I am an intense guy, but I ended up falling in love with the city and the people there. I mean, I really did. I loved those hippies. I made fun of them all the time, and that probably, you know, hurt some of my attendance. Everybody at my shows was from a different place, but I enjoyed it. I mean, it helped me grow a lot as a person and a comic. I mean, comedy works. You know, that was my starting place.
What took you to Denver? What drove you to make that change?
Well, I got the 2 DUIs that I talk about on stage.
Okay.
And I was the general manager of a bar at the time, and I lost everything. And I was just basically living on the street. I got evicted from my place, lost a lot of friends, a lot of people that I thought believed in me gave up on me. Then I worked for my buddy's concrete company for a little bit, and then I went back home and was living with my parents at 30 years old. And and I decided that I wasn't going to, go out like that. And
had you started comedy at that point?
I'd done it. I started at the bar that I worked at in Jacksonville, Alabama. Yeah, we had like country music every night, which I love country music, but I was like, if I hear Wagon Wheel again, I'm going to jump in traffic. So I was like, I'm going to start doing comedy like once every month or once every few months just to mix it up in here.
So there wasn't an open mic. There wasn't anything going on. It wasn't even a comedy show. And you're like, I'm going to go up there and tell some
I'm going to
jokes.
do 45 minutes. I watched Robin Williams live on Broadway, and I was like, all right, I think I got, I think I got an idea of what we're trying to do here.
That's
and
so funny.
and it was horrific. It was terrible comedy, but it was fascinating to my buddies because nobody around there was doing anything close to that. The fact that I was doing any public speaking, and it was all super local stuff, I've always just wrote about things that I can see and feel. I don't sit in coffee shops and come up with this stuff. I write about things that trigger me emotionally, happy, mad, sad, and so, it was, that's how I got started.
So your first time on stage at a bar during a country show, and you did how long? 45 minutes?
Probably the first time I probably did like, I don't remember. I don't drink anymore, and I did back then.
Fair.
And I drank a lot.
Liquid courage.
No, I mean, I used to take like 9 Jaeger bombs and then go on stage and just lose my mind for 40 minutes. And I had no idea what to talk about. Never met another comedian at this point. At this point, had never been to an open mic. Was just the Derrick Stroup comedy show at Brothers Bar in Jacksonville, Alabama. And all my friends would come. I would make pictures like $1. So it would feel like that I was selling tickets or something. You make pictures $1 in a college
People
town.
show up.
Yeah, there's like 100 people in there, and I'd go, look, I am decent at this, clearly. But I was terrible. And that's really how I got started. And then I moved to Huntsville for a couple months, Huntsville, Alabama. They've got a small scene there.
So they had a scene. There was no scene where you were at all.
No scene in Jacksonville, Alabama.
Do you remember your first laugh?
I don't think I remember my first laugh.
Do you remember the first joke you wrote to tell on stage?
Yeah, the first joke I ever wrote was Campbell Stroup. I could never name my son Campbell because he'd be Campbell Stroup. And then I told my mom the joke, and she thought it was even funnier because if he was anything like me growing up, he'd be Chunky Campbell Stroup. It was the first joke I ever wrote. Yeah, man. Yeah.
That's funny.
That's something. I can tell you that.
I remember the first joke I wrote I started in a duo, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, he was very tall.
So like the Sklar brothers.
Yeah, but
is that what a duo is?
It's a duo. Yeah, two of us.
Yeah.
And we did it for a short time. Dude, he was so naturally funny.
Yeah.
We called the Rasta and the Rabbi, and we did jokes and sketch and like did it for a short time. We got asked to do a little TV early on, and he was younger. He's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then he moved to like Maui, and he's been there ever since.
Holy smokes.
But he was taller, half black, long dreads, wore a sweater. I was like a hippie and a dashiki.
This sounds very entertaining.
So the first joke I wrote, first time we went on stage, it was the Black and Jewish Coalition. Is what we went by before the roster went by. So it was We're the Black and Jewish Coalition. And he said, that's because he thinks he's black. And I said, and he's hung like a Jew.
Oh, my goodness.
First joke I ever wrote for comedy.
That is so funny. Writing your first joke, I can remember it feeling really cool. Like having something that I'm going to present to these people that I've come up with.
And then it gets a laugh, and you're like,
man, that's the best.
You know what? If number one goes, who cares if 3 or 4 don't?
Yeah, no, you're right.
What was the feedback from people who in a town with no live comedy? What was that feedback like early on from you getting up there?
I mean, I had the best support, man, because off stage, everybody was rooting for something like this. I've always, been a little bit of a jester, I've always been holding court and telling stories and making fun of people and being quick on my feet. And so that transition was easy, and I didn't ever dream of doing comedy, and I've always been a fan of it. But when you grow up in Alabama, you don't think I'm going to be a comedian one day. I mean, if you told those people that you'd end up in a very specific place. But I never dreamed of that. And so
most people are doing 3 minutes.
Yeah, I know.
To 5 minutes.
Yeah.
their first time on stage.
Yeah, well, I struggled with that so much. When I went to Denver and they were like, do 5 minutes, I didn't know how to get out of there. Doing 5 minutes is way harder. Being funny in 5 minutes is way harder than being funny in 40.
Yeah.
Because here I am, I can weave and bob and go all these different directions and figure this thing out. Having a structured set in 3 to 5 minutes ate me alive. When I first got to Denver, I mean, it was tough. I did like 5 mics, stopped for 2 months, and went, hold on. I was like, something is not, I don't know if I'm doing this correctly or this doesn't feel good. I mean, it was a struggle. So I went back and like regrouped, got my mind right, and came back and was trying to do it again. And it took me a while to figure out how to have a structured set and have an identity. And, you know, I was part of the New Talent. It's a New Talent program at Comedy Works, which is a Tuesday night program they've had for a long time. I don't know if you've ever heard about it.
I have.
Deacon Gray was the guy that started it. He was my mentor. Well, he's the one that kind of taught me about having an identity on stage and introducing yourself and that sort of thing, and getting into a set. And so that's once I learned that helped me a lot. But yeah, I mean, 40 minutes, but like I said, man, I was very intoxicated. I mean, and it wasn't good. I have to really make that clear. It was not good comedy.
So Comedy Works is your home club.
Yeah.
Was there a club in Huntsville?
Not at the time. There is now.
But there was a scene.
There was a scene. Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, they weren't like super friendly. You know, people didn't love the idea that I showed up and I was like, yeah, I do my own thing. And I just book
You created your own opportunity.
Yeah. They didn't love that. They wanted you to be in the scene. They want to see some suffering. You got to do some, you know, I show up and I don't hate it. I look back on it. I get it. You know, at the time it hurt my feelings and all it did was put a chip on my shoulder, but I get it. You know, I was coming in. I've never been to an open mic. And to be honest, I mean, you know, I was probably about as funny as these guys already, you know, stepping in, and I hadn't practiced. You know, I'd just been getting up on stage talking to drunk friends.
But that's what it is.
No, yeah.
Now you're just here talking to our drunk friends.
That's a good point.
Comedy Works does something very interesting that I haven't even. I think in LA, New York, where there's a lot of showcase shows and stuff like that versus the road, Comedy Works is really doing their own thing with local talent. And it's very interesting in the sense of the locals get booked for a show. So if you're going to feature, you're going to feature this show Friday. That's then somebody else is going to come in for the next show on Friday. Where anywhere else, you're doing the whole weekend. So, which I always found that doing, and I'm really intrigued because we do have a growing community here, and it's especially since we've opened. And dude, the community in Kansas City is very strong. Right?
Yeah,
again,
absolutely,
and it's really nice. So, I do feel that we don't always have as much opportunity to book our comics, especially with everybody bringing their own openers. So, I have entertained that thought in my head, but. Man, there is really something to be said about getting those reps in.
Yeah, for
about
sure.
About doing 5 shows, especially as an MC, as a feature. And man, we can see it with the young talent, first show Thursday to late show Saturday. If we have a newer MC and we're teaching them how to host and we're teaching them how to get laughs as a host, man, it's night and day.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get that doing a show here, a show there. So can you talk a little, I mean, that's how you were introduced to clubs.
That's right.
So talk a little bit, because I mean, from the inside of that, how do you get those reps doing a one show a weekend? Or is it just the city itself provides so much opportunity?
To me, I think Wendy probably looks at it like, more people are getting less reps instead of a lot more people get, you know, or a lot less people getting more. So she's feeding more people.
I get that.
But we're not getting as many reps individually. So I think she's trying to reach out and touch everybody.
Which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. But I also understand what you're saying. And she's very in tune.
I'm not faulting this.
No, I don't think you are at all. I don't think you are at all. And
like I said, I've entertained it, the thought of it.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day for me, and I want to come back to you, but I think the end of the day for me is I'm going to find the people I believe in the most and help them become the best that I can before they leave Kansas City to go to LA or New York.
That's right.
And I'm not going to be able to do that giving people one show a weekend.
Yeah. No, I get that. And I think, I can't speak for Wendy, but I think she would say she's got a bunch of superstars on her roster.
Absolutely.
So it's not like some scenes where you go, well, I got one or two horses in the stable that can really run. She can put anybody she wants in there. It's like Bill Belichick plug and play. Like, it doesn't matter. I can put anybody off. So she's sprinkling her all-stars in there Thursday night, and it's almost sometimes a flex for the headliner to see, look, I'm going to send you 3 different comics on 3 different nights, and you're not going to believe how good all 3 of these people are about to be. And she also knows how healthy the indie scene is. The reps
in Denver,
yeah,
Denver is such a healthy scene for comedy.
It is.
They support. It doesn't matter, festival, not. Every show I go to is sold out.
For sure.
People are going to venues for comedy all over the city.
Absolutely. It's one of the best things about the Denver comedy scene is the audiences, the shows, the showrunners. It's all
What makes it that way?
I think Denver is notoriously a great comedy town. People like to go do things in Denver. They like to go out. They like to go have a drink. They like to go see a show. They like to go on a walk. They like to go see the mountains. Denver people aren't sit inside people. They're out and about people, and that helps the comedy scene. And also, Denver's got such a strong group of comedians that when you go to a random brewery in Denver, you're going to see somebody you really like.
And people know that.
And people know that. There's absolute killers everywhere. I mean, I'd travel around and do shows, and I'd tell people I lived in Denver, and they'd be so shocked. And I'm like, you're shocked at you don't even know what's back there. There's all these people in Denver that can just crush, and nobody knows about them. I mean, it's just in the middle of the country. And so Comedy Works is actually notorious for having openers that sometimes, I've heard that people bring their own because they're a little bit worried about what Wendy will put in front of them. Because she's got such a strong roster.
They bring their own everywhere. I want to continue this conversation. We're going to reset the cameras. We'll come back with a quick word from our sponsor. And, all right, we'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Right Now at the Comedy Club, here at the Comedy Club in Kansas City. I would like to take a quick second to thank our sponsors at the Comedy Club of Kansas City. Please follow us online simply at thecomedyclubkc.com. Check our calendar for all upcoming shows. And, hey, if there's comedians you want to see, just reach out. Follow us on social media. If you haven't followed us on Instagram and you do follow us, it's maybe the only way to get tickets for this. We don't comp at all ever. So,
yeah.
But Jeremy likes to engage with new followers and get them into the club if they haven't been here before. So follow us on Instagram. Say hi to Jeremy on there. Yeah. Okay. So you're talking about Denver and the scene there.
Yeah.
What is it that makes you were talking about in like the audience there? I guess because you have such a stacked. You have such a stacked community of comics. Did you know how strong? Because I'm guessing you moved to Denver because they had public transportation and a good comedy scene, and it wasn't New York.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I saw Sam Talent and Aaron Urist and a few other guys on this Viceland episode, like Flophouse or something, and they looked like a bunch of rascals running around, a bunch of delinquents.
You can see Sam Talent the first week of April right here at the Comedy Club of Kansas City.
You should go see my buddy Sam. He's very unique.
He's made people throw up here from laughing.
The guy's unbelievable.
He's so funny on stage.
Yeah, and he's the king of Denver. That's for sure. He lives in Detroit now. But anyways, I saw those guys.
Did he move to Detroit?
Yeah, he lives in Detroit. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't
Isn't
know
that cool?
I didn't know he relocated.
Yeah, pretty random. That's where his wife's from.
You just moved yourself.
Yeah, I live in New York City, Dustin.
So you came in for a private event like less than a month ago, maybe a month ago?
A month ago.
And you were not in New York then?
I was living in Denver then. And since then, I have gone across the country, and I am a resident of Astoria, Queens.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you. I've been there for 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks. I love it.
Were you asked to move there? Were you suggested to move there?
No. My management was pumped out of their mind because I brought it to them.
Okay.
I don't think they could believe it. They were shocked. I knew that I needed to go somewhere. I went to L.A., cool place if you're rich and you drive. I don't drive, and I'm not rich.
You have a car?
No. I haven't drove in 14 years.
You have a license back, though.
Yeah. Okay. But I haven't drove in a very long time. Sometimes I parallel park for Alyssa just to let her know, come on, come on.
Papa still got it.
Hey, come on. Big daddy. You know what I mean? No backup cam. So anyways, yeah. But no.
Alyssa, that's fiance or wife?
Fiance.
Fiance.
Yeah.
How did she feel about that move?
It was the city that she was excited about out of the ones we had as options.
Okay.
But she didn't really want to leave Denver. But I promised her it wouldn't be forever. And so, she's a lot more introverted than I am. And so she's trying to get used to it's a different world there. She got really used to things in Denver. So she made a sacrifice for your boy, which, I'm a lucky guy.
There's one thing I know about New York is it makes you trim the fat and it makes you trim it really quick.
Oh, that's
especially
for sure.
for up and coming. So I know you talked about that transition in comedy going from Alabama doing 40 minutes at bars to having to do 5 minutes in Denver. So what is it as somebody who's been doing this season pro, kills everywhere? What is it like going to New York now as a comic?
Well, I feel like the luckiest guy in the world because I'm passed by the Cellar, and so I've been doing spots there.
Congratulations!
Thank you, man. It's the coolest thing ever. Esty and Liz and all those folks, they all take care of me, and I get when I'm available. They give me lots of sets, and it's the best. And so 15-minute sets, and every time I go in there, man, I mean, I've worked on a few new things on stage in there, but I mean, it's prime time in the Cellar. I mean, it is one of my favorite environments to be in. These people have traveled all across the world. I've never been in front of audiences like this. I got 3 tables to the left from Germany, 2 tables from the right from Russia. I mean, it's a wild room, and the people in the middle are from Nebraska and Portland. It's wild.
That is very real.
Yeah.
What you're saying. When you have to be universal, it teaches you a whole new meaning of universal, because being a universal comic in America is just, hey, let's talk about things everybody in America, you know what I mean? But to be universal in New York,
oh my God. Yeah, man.
You're talking to the world.
Yeah, you are.
The entire world at almost every show.
Yeah, and I love how challenging it is. That's what made me kind of fall in love with comedy in New York, is they didn't let me lean on some redneck shtick where I go, well, I'm from Alabama and here's a bunch of Alabama material, which I love. I'm a Southern act and I own that, but I like to be a smart Southern act, and you can't get away with trying some dumb lowbrow stuff in New York City. They won't have it. They want to see smart. They want to hear fast. They want to keep it moving. We're here for the jokes. We want this to make sense, and I love an audience that's like that. And funny's currency in New York, and that's what I appreciate. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're funny up there, they'll give you the nod, which I and I mean, the Cellar. I've been watching Colin Quinn and Louis C.K. and Chris Rock and stuff. I mean, watching those guys work in person is insane. Feels like a fever dream.
You had performed there prior to moving to New York.
I had a few times.
Just a few, and then you weren't passed there though.
Yeah, I mean, I got
passed.
Yeah, I got passed in the wildest way. I found out later through talking through Esty that I pretty much got passed. She saw me at JFL in person and pretty much passed me then to come to the club, and they reached out and were like, you can work whenever you want. And I told a couple of the guys at the Cellar, like young guys that I met like last year, I was like, I think I'm passed here. And they're like, did you audition? And I was like, no, but and then let me tell you, I promise you, they treated me.
The jealousy just
raged. Did you audition? I go, no, I didn't. And I mean, no, I don't even know if it was jealousy. I think they were like, I don't think you're passed, my man. Is kind of the attitude I got by a couple guys, which I live off a good grudge, but I did. I got passed in a really I guess different way than usual.
So that thing of people seeing you perform and saying, "Come to my stage," is a pretty common occurrence.
Yeah. I mean, you're wonderful. Right. Yeah, that is cool. I've had that a couple times, and to have somebody like Esty tell you that was like the most flattering thing ever.
So what was it like the first time on stage at the Cellar?
The first time I was on stage there, the next night I was doing the Tonight Show spot on Jimmy Fallon.
Oh my God!
So they have you run 3 spots at the Cellar the night before, and that's when I was kind of wondering what was going on because they were introducing me to the staff.
Had you done much comedy in New York before?
Never. No, and I got up there and I just ran my Tonight Show, and it went great. Okay. I mean, every room, I did 3 different rooms, boom, 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 and I was like, okay, I feel really good about this. And then,
do they introduce you, bring you up, hey, he's going to work on his Tonight Show?
That's exactly right. It's really cool. They do it for all, the way I understood it, they do it for all the comics. You get to do a Cellar run the night before, and they go, hey, everybody, and that could, there could be other people listening to this going, this guy, I did not do the Cellar the night before I did Jimmy Fallon. I might just be lucky, but they acted like that's what they did, and they were so cool about it. They were like, give it up for this guy. Tomorrow night he's on Jimmy Fallon. He's going to run his set right now. I mean, they've always been the Cellar, and I'm not just saying this. They're so nice. They're like, your club too. The staff is so gracious, so nice, so kind, and it makes you reciprocate that type of treatment right back to them. But at the Cellar, man, they really treat you like gold, and so they've welcomed me. As soon as they find out you're on the team, I mean, it's crazy. They like hug you, and they're like, the most famous people can walk in. And they go, oh, he's on the roster. He's part of the team, and it's like they start talking to you different immediately. It's really cool.
And then so that was your first encounter performing comedy in New York. Is running your late night 7.
Yeah, that's right.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was
that's a lot different than the basement open mics that can exist in some of these off rooms in New York.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I got to tell you something that's kind of crazy, and this plays right into, but I couldn't see anything that night. And I couldn't see anything. This was at the beginning of me having an autoimmune disease. And so my vision had gone completely blurry. And so I didn't know what the Cellar looked like. Like, I had Alyssa walk me over and show me how to find my way to the stage because I could only see like the outline of things. And so that's how it was on my Tonight Show set, is I cannot see the cue cards. I can't see Jimmy Fallon. I couldn't see Questlove or any of the guys.
We talked about this last time you were in town. You have sarcoidosis.
I have sarcoidosis, yeah. And nobody knows about that. This would be the first time that I'd ever mentioned it publicly. But yeah, I got diagnosed in February of 2024, but I've had complications from it a lot of 2023. And then it came to a head a week before I did Jimmy Fallon. I lost my vision in both eyes to just basically overwhelming amount of floaters. I couldn't really see anything, and went to the emergency room, and it was, they thought I was having an aneurysm. They didn't know that, I had one pupil that's larger than the other, and it still is a lot of times from the sarcoidosis. They thought I was having some type of brain aneurysm, and it was a wild thing. I told them, I go, in 4 days I leave to go to New York to do Jimmy Fallon. And they were like, you can't, you're not gonna. And I was like, yeah, I am. Yeah. Then next day I flew out from Jimmy Fallon. I was coming to Kansas to see my fiance's family. My mother had reached out to her family and told them that I'd lost my vision. And so when they landed to pick me up, they picked me up at 11 p.m. from the airport. And they drove me to Lawrence, Kansas, and I met an eye specialist at his office. And he said, the only reason I'm meeting you here is because your mother begged me and hysterically over the phone. And she said, you did Jimmy Fallon last night? And he's like, I checked out your set. No joke. He's like, good set. And he's like, so he opened up his office at midnight, and he like checked me out, and he was like, you're in a lot of trouble. And he's like, your eye pressure is like, one eye's 27, the other eye's 26. He's like, those things are about to explode. He gave me 3 eye drops to get from Walgreens to kind of control my eye pressure because he didn't want me to lose my vision. But he had no idea. It took months of testing to find out it was sarcoidosis. At the time, I used to do a joke about it. I sat down, I go, my vision's blurry. A
lot of people would have canceled the Jimmy Fallon or postponed it. But you're like, it ain't
happening. No, that wasn't even on the table.
I get it.
No. I thought I was dying. No, I didn't know I had sarcoidosis. I thought I had cancer or something. So I thought I was dying. There's a lot of background to this. Kind of how I got my autoimmune disease was probably from me having health anxieties and convincing myself of a few things. But when I did Jimmy, there was no other option. But anyways, he told me he just saw my nipples through my polo, and I told him I had blurry vision. He's like, you got diabetes. And I was like, there's no way. I was like, there's no way I have. And I go, can we do like one test? And I mean, I told him, I mean, he chuckled. I go, you haven't ran one test. You just looked at me and gave me diabetes. I was like, that hurts my feelings. I got to be honest. And I didn't have diabetes. So anyways, lots of testing. I had to end up going, I had a pulmonologist, retina specialist. It went to my eyes because I didn't address it. I let it go on for 6 or 7 months after it started. And so my lungs are clearing up. I've had 2 eye surgeries. It's crazy.
It definitely affects the lungs as well.
Yeah.
You were here and you said I have sarcoidosis. I said, that's the Bernie Mac disease. And you're like, I haven't heard that before. And then you looked it up and you found.
Yeah, I went home and learned that. I mean, he has an entire treatment center named after him. He had it from like his early 20s until his death. I mean, it definitely was part of what gave him trouble in the end and why he died so young.
And the only reason I know anything about it is Kansas City lost a wonderful comedian, and I lost a dear friend, Taifu Panda, to sarcoidosis.
Yeah.
And, you know, he would travel all the time, and he would end up in VAs all over the country with collapsed lungs, and he just kept going.
Yeah.
Kept, you know,
Yeah.
just wasn't.
You know, and it affected my lungs really, really bad. I mean, I was on prednisone for 7 months this year. 7 months in a row, 20 milligrams. That's wild, man. I mean, that's riding a rocket ship for a long time.
It's really interesting, and that's the fucking world is that here you are.
Yeah. Greatest year of my life, Dustin.
One of the greatest angry comics who screams on stage.
That wasn't lost on me either.
And you have sarcoidosis, which heavily affects the lungs.
Yeah.
So does that, I mean, are you having to work within those boundaries on stage?
So here's what happened. At first, it was affecting my breathing a lot.
And fuck the universe a little bit.
Man.
For those fucking, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I was definitely looking back. When you get something like that, an autoimmune disease, and all those things happen, you start looking back on...
I want to be bitter for you.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I was going through my karma catalog to see where I might have picked this up along the way. Going, my goodness, who did I do? You know, maybe calling a few people going, hey, listen,
sorry.
I can't breathe and I'm blind, all right? You win. You win. You win. I believe in that stuff a little too much, so sometimes you wonder.
I know, man.
Yeah, you wonder. You know? Sometimes some of your buddies are talking about all the bad luck they've had, and I'm like, have you called your kids? You know? Maybe it's not just bad luck. But, yeah, and what were we talking about? I forget.
Working with it on stage.
So this is what's really interesting. At my peak of having trouble breathing, which was probably from November of 2023 to probably, I would say, April of 2024, I had to pace myself different on stage. And so then, like, people around me were starting to go, hey, man, this new pacing you have is killer. They go the peaks and the valleys. They go, I see what you're doing. And I didn't tell them, but I was thinking, I'm running out of breath, and I'm having to reset and amp back up again. But that created something I liked.
You have to have that balance.
For sure.
Like, I'm not going to talk names, like, but there is a local who he just came out and screamed, and he could have been really good.
Mm-hmm.
But he took his energy here, and he kept it there. And it was just screaming at the top of his lungs the entire time, and to the point where, like, we had people, you're just exhausting your audience.
Yeah, for sure.
We had people email us during the show, like during his performance, like this is
during
the worst.
Email during the show is next level.
This is like the worst thing I've ever seen in my life, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and we tried because I really believed in him.
Yeah.
And he just didn't want to learn. But like when you watch Kinnison would start here, man.
Yeah.
And he'd get a little more and get a little more, and then he's just in your face, and that's the build. That's the energy, that the balance. You can't just stay here. It doesn't mean anything. You're not yelling if you're always yelling.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And and I was already kind of figuring out my pacing, but this breathing helped me do it even more. I mean, I sit in the pocket way more than I used to, and I'm able to pace my set in a way that I enjoy a lot more. And it's made a difference in my comedy, my delivery. And so that's the only good thing I can think of that came from it. But yeah, it was a wild year. And talking about starting off so low, I had a guy, I did a set not too long ago, and one of the guys in the industry, he came over to me and he was like, "You seemed a little nervous at the beginning of your set." He's like, "You started off kind of timid and quiet, and and I just wanted to be like, yeah, because I'm building. I'm starting off when this guy, I can't remember what comic it was, but a comic at the Cellar was like, "Man, I love how you come out and you kind of let everybody know, like, hey, I'm pretty normal." And then you go and you show your cards and you're a psychopath. But he goes, kind of setting the table at first and being like, "Look, I'm not an insane person. I'm not going to yell the entire time." You're right. It makes a difference. That pacing and that build, it helps for sure.
Man, the next time you just have some really long-winded rant on stage, screaming, just stop, wait a few seconds, pull out an inhaler. And
yeah, for sure. For sure.
This is just oxygen, guys.
Yeah.
It's just
yeah, well, and the good thing is my lungs are almost completely back now, thank goodness. But yeah, it was a wild ride.
So you are under control at the moment.
Yeah, I'm under control. I still go see my pulmonologist and my retina specialist every 3 months.
It makes me so happy.
Yeah, but yeah, they got me. Here's what's also great. National Jewish in Denver is the #1 respiratory hospital in the entire country, and they specialize in lung diseases. And so right there in my backyard was the best resources you could possibly have for what I had going on, and it was the best. So it's all worked out.
Makes me really happy.
Yeah, thank you, man. I'll yell. I'll live to yell another day.
What's probably just have a couple fun questions here to wrap up.
Let's do it.
What's the worst? You didn't travel much as a road comic, but
No.
What's the worst car you've ever had?
The worst car, I never really, I never had a bad. I had that Camry for like 11 years, and it went with me until the state wouldn't let me own it anymore. And I got that's 100% true. Yeah, and I'll tell you, I tell everybody, I don't know much about cars because I only ride in them, but that Toyota Camry didn't even need gas or oil, or it didn't need much. It just needed me to care, and it would drive wherever I wanted it to. So I always tell people, if they're looking for a car or a day-to-day, I'm like, Toyota's a tough company to beat. Yeah. But I never, a car question's, tough for me because it's just not a world I live in.
I don't know tons about cars, but the idea of like, I know that I had really shitty cars like as a road comic, and like that would take me. I'd buy a $1,200 car once a year. I drove it till it fell apart, and then I'd just go buy another one.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I've been in some road comic cars quite a few times in my life. You know, you got Arby's bags up to your knees. Yeah, it's quite the situation.
I mean, it wasn't that bad, and I was living out of it for a while. But like I think the final one was. I think you just did the math. You're like, okay, I'm spending $1,200 a year on this car. I'm spending probably $200 close to like every other month to fix it. Yeah. And all this other crap. I'm like, so for the amount that I'm paying a year, I could just break that up into car payments, have a brand new car with like some crazy warranty.
It's right in front of you.
I've never not had a new car yet since. I'm getting a new one every 3 years.
I love it.
I want a new one.
That is so great. That is so great.
You got any good comedy horror stories, like hecklers or just like awful?
I don't deal with many hecklers in my style of comedy.
They don't engage.
Yeah. I mean, I chop through them pretty quick. But no, I've been pretty lucky when it comes to like the horror stories of being on the road. I have more problems with the front desk of hotels than I do audiences.
Yeah.
It just never seems like I can get my room checked in correctly anywhere that I go to. I mean, yours was smooth as butter, but I've got it's a real Tom and Jerry situation with me in the front desks throughout America. We're always into it.
You're like, all my cars are great. Comedy's perfect.
Yeah.
I love hearing
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Up and coming comedians that you want to give a shout out to, that you think people should check out online? Any friends or just really funny people that you've seen lately? Maybe somebody we should know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, out of Denver, there's a couple youngsters that are really, really funny. Hannah Jones, Eland Stribling is another very funny person.
Eland Stribling? Hannah okay.
Yeah, both of those folks are just, and I mean, Hannah's kind of created her own following. She's got quite the online following. And listen, I don't just listen to comedy that's like me. So if you like my comedy and you like my Southern style and all that, that doesn't mean that that's what these people do. These are just other comedians that I really, I think have got something, or people that I've noticed that are really funny. But yeah, I'll tell you, Winston Hodges out of Washington D.C., that dude's very funny. He opened for me in Syracuse, and he crushed. Mike James out of Nashville. But yeah, and in my all-time, the guy that I'll never feel like gets enough love, the modern day Rodney Dangerfield, is John Novosad out of Boulder, Colorado. He's been doing comedy forever. He's got like 4 late night appearances. Watches Dry Bar. You think Dry Bar comedy's not funny? I get it. You've seen some that have scarred you. John Novosad is one of the funniest people in America, and not enough people know about him, and I love him, and you should check him out for sure.
He headlines everywhere?
He headlines. He opens for Josh Blue like pretty regularly, but John's a real gem, and I'll tell you, if I described you to him, he's so funny that I'd tell you he's funny before he's a great guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You ever ask about a comic, and they go, hey, man, one of my favorite people, and I go, I asked if he was funny. And you led with the wrong foot.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it works. But anyways, yeah, those are my shout outs.
That's awesome. Derrick, this has been wonderful. What are you working on? You have a TV thing coming out?
Yeah,
I think by the time this comes out, it will have just come out.
Cool. Okay, December 19th, I'm on CBS primetime, 7 p.m., Nate Bargatze's holiday special. I'm doing a 10-minute spot on CBS. And there's some sketches that Mikey Day and a few others from SNL put together for it. That show is going to be awesome. Y'all check that out. Thank you for having me, and thanks for running an awesome club and being a great dude. I'll come here as long as I'm alive. I really love working this place. So thanks for having me, and I'm proud to know you. Really,
man. Thank you. Yeah. And congrats on everything. What's your socials?
Yeah, Derrick Yells is what I'll be. Yeah, on Instagram, Facebook. Derrick, like Tommy Davidson. I opened for him in 2017. I walked into the room, and he goes, "You're hosting for me?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "You're Derrick?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Come here." And he gave me a hug, and he goes, "You spell your name like a brother." And I go, "Thank you very much." Because he told me, he said Derek is for white folks. And I go, "Oh, I didn't know that."
We had a white folk check in with Derek last night.
Yeah, that makes
you're spelled.
No, he doesn't. They don't have soul like
cultural.
me. I didn't know, but I have found out that it is, and I love that. Derek is seems like a lacrosse player, a guy that would sue you, and that's not me. You know what I mean? I got more soul, baby. Come on.
Is that Alabama?
That's right.
Man, stay in touch. I always love you as a person, as a comic. Thank you for doing this, and thanks for letting me try a little bit different format with the show today. I really enjoyed this a lot. So
yeah, appreciate it, Dustin. Thank you.
All right, let's go get some barbecue.
Yeah.
All right. Well, see you next week, guys. Follow us, The Comedy Club KC, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. Subscribe on all of it. Share with your friends. Bye, guys.
Later.